Hello everyone, in this video we are just going to interface DHT temperature and humidity sensor with Raspberry Pi Pico W. Let's get started. So on the first hand, let us discuss in detail about the schematic diagram that we are going to build in this particular video so that we can understand in detail about the circuit that I am going to build in the breadboard for interfacing the DHT sensor with Raspberry Pi Pico W. Basically, the DHT sensor consists of three different lines: 5 volt, ground and signal. So the 5 volt will be connected to the VSys pin of the Raspberry Pi Pico for powering up the sensor, and the ground will be connected to the ground of Raspberry Pi Pico. So we are just going to use the same power of the Raspberry Pi Pico W for powering up the sensor, and the signal line we are just going to connect it to the digital pin 16 or GP16 of Raspberry Pi Pico W. So that's all about the schematic diagram that we are going to build, and let us discuss in detail about the Python script required for interfacing and fetching the data from this particular DHT temperature and humidity sensor using Raspberry Pi Pico W. So I'm just going to open the Tony IDE, which is the IDE which we have been using in a while for developing the Python scripts required for Raspberry Pi Pico W. And here I'm just going to write a single line import mission, and I'm going to save this particular script. Just click on this particular icon or Control S in your keyboard for saving the script. Go to the respective path where you want the Python scripts to be stored in your PC. I'm saving it as DHT, and you can see automatically it gets saved in the format of Python, that is .py format. And let's continue with the script that we want for interfacing DHT sensor with Raspberry Pi Pico W. And another module that I want to import here is DHT, which is a very important module for interfacing this particular sensor. And in addition to that particular module, I'm just going to import time module for using rough delays in my program. And here, as the next step, I am just going to declare a variable called DHT sensor, and this variable will be receiving a initialization parameter like DHT11, and this particular DHT11 method will help you to initialize the DHT sensor with a particular pin. And as we know, we just connected the DHT11 sensor to GP16 of Raspberry Pi Pico W. I'm just going to pass 16 to this particular pin method so that the DHT sensor will be initialized with the GP16 of Raspberry Pi Pico W. So here you can see we are passing mission pin 16 since we have connected the DHT11 sensor to GP16 of Raspberry Pi Pico W, and this particular DHT11 will help you to initialize the sensor DHT. And next I'm just going to write an infinite loop. So since now we are not using main function in our program, we have been using this particular infinite loop for interfacing various interfaces like RGB LED, etc. So we will be looking into how to create a main function in Python in future videos, that is in next or next to that video. From then we will be using main function. So main function will be involved only when you are building an application, not when you are trying to interface a particular peripheral to the Raspberry Pi Pico W in Python. So if there is a purpose, we will be doing it, or if we are just interfacing an peripheral, we will be using only the while of true for continuous execution. And here I am just going to call or write down the variable name that we have declared and defined right over here, and with that variable name we are just going to call the method measure. So this measure method will help you to measure the temperature and humidity data from DHT11 sensor. So this line will be fetching the temperature and humidity data from DHT11, and next to that I am just going to give a time delay of 5 seconds. Here the program will wait for 5 seconds, and after that I am just going to declare another variable called temp, which will be fetching the temperature information from the sensor. So for that I am just going to use the same variable declared and defined right over here, which is configured with the DHT11, and using that variable I am just going to call the method temperature. So this will fetch me the temperature data from DHT sensor and store it in the variable called temp. And similarly I am just going to declare and define another variable called humi, and this variable I will be using it for storing the humidity data. So I'm just going to call a method called humidity like we did before for temperature. So this will fetch the humidity data and store it in humi variable, and this will fetch the temperature data and it will store it in the temp variable. And following that I am just going to print these two, humidity and I'm just going to print the humi variable, and then I'm just going to print temperature and I'm going to print temp variable. I'm saving this. So here I'm just going to do one particular change, that is I'm just going to put this particular DHT import above the machine. It was throwing error for me when I was connecting with the DHT sensor, so I'm just doing this. And in your case, if it is working, you just leave it, else you just put it over above the machine. Sometimes it is throwing error. So now I'm just going to run the program by clicking on this particular icon or F5 in my keyboard. So you can see the output in the cell window of Tony IDE right over here. And as I bring the soldering iron near the DHT sensor, you can see gradually the temperature is increasing and humidity is decreasing. So this is the output that I got in the hardware, and when I remove the soldering iron in the place of DHT, when I isolate, you can see the temperature value is decreasing gradually. And this is the output which I got in the hardware, and see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.